And I hope you see the full screen, don't you?
Yes, we can see. We can watch.
You see the full screen now.
I know full screen, just in yes, perfect.
Presenter mode.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
So thanks a lot. Okay, so thanks for the introduction. So my speech today is about bundles and indicators of soil-based ecosystem services and soil threats from the SERENA project. And I prepared this presentation together with the coordination team of SERENA, with some results of the SERENA consortium, especially those from Jessica Reyes-Rojas from Czech Republic. And I see that there are lots of several SERENA participants attending this conference, and I hope they will help me answering the questions. So first of all, what is the EGP SERENA project? So it deals with soil ecosystem services and soil threats modeling and mapping, and it gathers 25 partners from 16 European countries, as you can see on this map. And we are doing several things in SERENA, but I would like first to share with you some definitions, because we are at the moment discussing about soil-based ecosystem services. So there are ecosystem services directly related to soil and directly quantifiably controlled or provided by soil, and the chemical, physical, biological properties, processes, and functions. So these three definitions are definitions we have proposed in the framework of SERENA. So threats are processes that could degrade some of all the functions of the soil and services that soils provide. And here we are interested in bundles. So a bundle is a set of ecosystem services, threats, or the combination of the two that appear together repeatedly in time and space as related to a specific context. So why are we interested in analyzing bundles? So first of all, I just would like to remind you the soil health dashboard presented by Lucas previously. And you remember this dashboard where you can identify the proportion of land affected by soil degradation in EU. At the moment, it's 65%, and it's calculated by evaluating each individual threat and summing all the threats to evaluate the level of degradation. But you can also remember the presentation of Mikko Barbero, who told us something about the EU soil strategy, where the citation is that soil are healthy when they are able to continuously provide as many of ecosystem services as possible. So we could also imagine a dashboard which could help us in defining the proportion of healthy soils, providing soil-based ecosystem services to enhance land capacities. And in that case, it will perhaps be not so easy to sum up the contribution of ecosystem services. So probably the sum would not be the right possibility, as it's useful for threats. Because if you remember, a very important result from the former EU landmark project, so land can be specialized, and so every soils provide all the ecosystem services, but they provide it at different levels. So that's why we're interested in looking at both bundles of threats and ecosystem services in SERENA. This is basically one of our three pillars. So firstly, deal with threats and soil-based ecosystem services bundles. The second point is to recognize that looking at threats and ecosystem services, sometimes it's the two faces of the same coin, and we can imagine that there are some indicators that could be easy to develop to evaluate both ecosystem services and threats, or quite the same to evaluate both. And the third pillar is the role taken by stakeholders, as Claire said at the beginning of the session. So stakeholders are very important in the HB soil. And here in SERENA, we do want to provide indicators useful for them. And so we expect that they help us in defining our definitions and framework and indicators, and then validate our final product. So what are the ecosystem services and threats of interest for EU member states? So we have made some questionnaire and we have asked our 16 partners in what they are interested. And so we have them sum up all the answers to evaluate some of them who are very important or less important. In fact, this question is important. It's not that easy to interpret because member states, when they decide that something is important for their country, sometimes it means that it's important for a scientific reason or for a policy reason, or sometimes it's important because it's only feasible. It means that data are available to deal with. Because of course, all member states are interested in all ecosystem services and threats, but sometimes they do not have enough data to evaluate them. So very important are biomass production, greenhouse gas regulation and carbon sequestration, hydrological control and erosion control. And we can also play the same game with threats, and threats are very important: soil organic carbon loss and erosion and compaction, and less drought, nutrient imbalance, stealing biodiversity. So how to try to deal with this question of two faces of the same coin? So we have tried to put them face to face, but as you can see, that's not that evident. Of course, we can compare carbon sequestration with soil organic carbon loss and soil erosion with erosion control, but it's not that evident to compare biomass production to nutrient imbalance, because of course, biomass production depends on other threats and ecosystem services, especially hydrological control, which is not taken as a threat as a whole. So we are trying to find indicators for both ecosystem services and threats at the same time, but we are also developing indicators that are specific to threats and ecosystem services. So of course, this sort of graph is still in discussion because affiliating each ecosystem services and threats is not that easy. And so let's have a look more precisely on the demands of the different member states. So first of all, on the left of this picture, you have a graph taken from a literature analysis, and we have analyzed the literature studies dealing with soil-based ecosystem services evaluation at the EU scale. And you can see that erosion control, greenhouse climate regulation, biomass production are definitely the most used, the most studied at the EU scale. And then this is the classification from the Serena partners. At a whole, they are interested in climate regulation, erosion control, biomass production, hydrological control, and less interested or less feasible for member states pest and disease control. And we can have a look on some examples. So of course, these are not all the partners involved in Serena. These are only some examples of prioritization of soil-based ecosystem services by member states. So first of all, you see that every country are interested in climate regulation together with hydrological control. And for them, pests and disease are definitely important, even if it is not a usual EU interest. And also biomass production is of high interest for lots of countries. And we can play the same game for threats. So on the left, you have the proportion of the literature studies dealing with soil threats evaluation at the EU scale. And so definitely now, soil erosion is the most important threat that is evaluated at the EU scale. And secondly, you have contamination, salinization, compaction, and soil loss. And you can compare this with the classification the general classification from Serena. So soil loss, soil erosion, soil compaction as very, very important. Salinization is not of interest for lots of member states, probably because salinization is not a threat that covers all the entire area of each country. There are spots of salinization, but not all areas. And we can also have a look at some example of threats of interest. So this is this is quite different from ecosystem services. You can see different interests, at the member state scale, but usually soil organic carbon loss is a very important question. Also, erosion for countries in South Europe. So now, what do we have to evaluate ecosystem services and threats? So we do need indicators, and we do need strategies to evaluate them. So first, we have we have browsed the literature, and we have identified some indicators for several threats and ecosystem services. I won't, of course, describe this now, but you have this list. And now we would like to choose. And so the chosen is, we decide this with some criteria. We classify them from the point of view of the scientific soundness. And so we are interested in the fitness to purpose and interpretability, the sensitivity. We are also, of course, interested in the data availability, which will make the indicators possible to calculate. And so we characterize the measurability, the scalability. And then we are interested, of course, in their ability to convey information. So do they are more or less intuitive, and do they allow policy implementation? And let's have a look, for example, of some indicators for soil erosion that we have here on the left, and we can classify them. And then, thanks to sort of ranking and selection, we hope that each stakeholder will find the more interesting indicator for threat and ecosystem services for his or her, for its own application. So of course, this is just an example, and this is still under discussion, because some of this, especially intuitivity or measurability, are not very easy to define. So also this morning, Claire said that harmonization probably would be more useful than standardization. And at the moment, we are looking at the potential for harmonization across Europe. And so let's take the example of soil organic carbon loss, for example. So you have here in plain color indicators selected from a huge literature review. So from the literature review, you can see that soil organic stock loss or stock or soil organic carbon content are the most usually used in the literature. And then we have looked at indicators that are used by member states at regional or national level. And quite 5% of the member states at the moment, or 50% of the member states use this type of indicators. Then they do have, they could be ideal for harmonization, and some of them use another which is not usually recommended in the literature. So look then at the soil erosion. You see that there is some indicators that are usually used by member states and which are recommended in the literature, but there are also other which could be perhaps, oh sorry, the two figures are at the wrong place at the moment. This is the yellow one and this is the green one, sorry. And there are also some indicators where the indicators recommended by the literature like this are definitely not used by member states, but also are used by member states. So of course, this is still under discussion, and we are playing at the moment the same game for ecosystem services. And so I invite you to join us for the final presentation of the Serena project to have some results. And now to finish a first evaluation of some bundles, some soil-based ecosystem services and threats. And to play this game, we have selected 2 ecosystem services of high importance for member states, so soil organic carbon loss and soil erosion, together with an ecosystem services of high importance, which is the primary biomass production. So I won't comment this data that we have used and so on, but let's now just have a quick look on the results. So these ecosystem services and threats are evaluated at the same location, And then with a statistical K-means system, we have clustered the region, and so that we can classify them in areas where erosion together with compaction are low and biomass production are quite less high. And you can compare to this cluster 2 with very high value erosion, low compaction, and medium compaction and low production. And then we have all these 6 clusters. At the moment, please do not look at the pixels on your own country. It may happen that you're not lucky with this, because we are, of course, working on this. This is only first results, definitely not to be discussed at the moment, but this is just to show you that we are in a possibility to evaluate at the same time based ecosystem services and threats bundles. So to conclude, our next activity is to finalize the selection of indicators for threats and cloud-based ecosystem services together with their bundles. We are at the moment developing cookbooks for a harmonized assessment of indicators at national and EU scale. And of course, we are still working on mapping threats, cloud-based ecosystem services and their bundles, and also their evolution over scenarios of change. So that's all. So thanks a lot for your attention. And I will